I want to pray for you. You're in the Grand Ole Opry House tonight. You paid $5 to see this show all through this evening. You didn't know that you were going to stay for Grand Ole Gospel time, but here you are. Now I want to pray for you. I'm not asking you to join a church. This is not a church. I'm not asking you to sign a membership card. I'm not asking you to change denominations. I just want to pray for you if you've got enough courage and honesty to say, brother, I want your prayer. Let me see your hand right now. Lift it now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Come on. I stood on stages like this one, recorded for RCA Victor for 7 years, traveled as an entertainer with my dad, Hank Snow, for a lot of years. I hit the bottom in 1957. The answer to your dilemma and your problem, mister, is in Jesus Christ. The answer to America's problems is Jesus Christ. I know that my Redeemer liveth, and I'm going to see him someday. Despite what his wife said, and despite what his friends said, and despite what he was thinking in his own mind, he had faith in God, but he was searching for God, just like you're searching for God, just like our viewers are searching for God, just like radio listeners are searching for God in a million different ways. They may try the bottle, they may try the pills, they may try sex, they may try 1,000 different things, because the world today, ladies and gentlemen, is sick. The world needs help. The world needs a Savior. The world needs a God that'll reach into their hearts and change men.
The way it all started was I wasn't raised in church. I worked the road with my father and mother, traveled from one end of Canada to the other in my early years, and actually started singing when I was 3, a little kid singing, but being an only child, I guess they wanted to display me a little bit. So I wound up, doing that all the way on up until I was 22. And the ministry situation never crossed my mind. And wasn't really anybody that was what I would call religiously seeking the things of God. When I'd go home and see my grandmother on my mother's side, which we'd stay there some, and if I was staying with them some, there was no such thing as going to church. And she had 8 brothers and a sister, so there were 9 people other than her in the family. And a couple of them were closer to my age, so I ran around with them. And I went to school there in the wintertime some. But basically, I was on the road all the time. So when we moved to the U.S., which would have been in 1948, I was 12 years old. And when we moved to the U.S., we immediately moved to Dallas, Texas. Dad had preceded us by going to Hollywood in 47. I think it was in the summertime, trying to further his career. But he really didn't get anywhere with it. He lost pretty much all his savings, and he wound up in Dallas. And the reason he chose Dallas was because he had one record that was doing pretty good in Dallas. It wasn't doing any good anywhere else, just in Dallas. But it was a pretty good, KRLD was a pretty good, large radio station. In those days, radio carried a whole lot more territory. So Ernest Tubb was booked into what was called at that time Big D Jamboree in Dallas. And Big D has actually catapulted a number of people like Ray Price and Billy Walker and a few others that came out of there. So Dad would guest every once in a while on Big D. He wasn't a regular member, but he would guest and sing a song once in a while when maybe somebody couldn't make it or something like that. And then he'd work those clubs. That's what kept us where we could eat and do the things we wanted to do. So when he heard that Ernest Tubb was coming to the Big D Jamboree, where Elvis Presley, by the way, also played, Dad just couldn't wait to go meet him.
Well, I tell you, I've known you for a long time, Hank, but here's a guy that's known you even longer than that. His name is Ernest Tubb.
Oh, my old buddy.
Yes, Marty, I met old Hank out in Fort Worth, Texas on my way to California. We played a show together, and Hank mentioned how he would love to be on the Grand Ole Opry, and I said, I'll see what I can do about it. I got to Hollywood, and I called the boss back here at WSM and told him I was going to send some Hank Snow records up there from my record shop for them to listen to, let me know what they thought about it. I called back 3 days later, and they said, he sounds too much like you. I said, all baloney. I said, I'm talking long distance, and this is my money. I'll talk to you when I get home. So when I got home, I said, he's got a Canadian accent. He couldn't sound like me. I said, the only thing we have in common, we love Jimmie Rodgers, but I think he has a style of his own, and give him a chance. So about a year later, they finally decided to give Hank a chance, and then he came out with Moving On about 3 months after that, and I had no more argument with WSM. They said, he can stay now, okay?
You got on the Grand Ole Opry, you were at the top of your game. And so things were going just, really great at that time for him. So he wound up getting that tryout. And so we moved from Dallas all the way to Nashville in December of 1949 when he became a part of the Grand Ole Opry, but more of a tryout. I think it was like maybe a 10-week tryout, something like that. And he bombed. He didn't do very well at all. As a matter of fact, he did terrible.
Half or 2/3 of the people thought because I was different and had a different style of singing that would be an asset, and I think it was in the early years. And
what did the other half of the people think?
Well, I guess they thought that Canadian thinks he's going to come down here and make a fortune, but we got news for him. The first 4 or 5 weeks that I was on the Opry, I went out there and sung my heart out, and it was...
And they were about to let him go when he had his hit record. He had like a couple of weeks and they'd have dropped him.
Then the good Lord stepped in and guided my pen as I wrote out Moving On, and that saved the day.
On Sunday, baby, when you pay to play, you're gonna want your daddy, put your daddy to sleep, keep moving on. Stay away too long. I'm through with you, too bad you're blue, keep moving on.
Suddenly, we're in one place. We're in Nashville. We have a nice new home. I'm running around with guys at the time, Everly Brothers. A lot of these guys were the same age as me. Tommy Sands, Gene Vincent, the Bebopaloola guy. Elvis was a pretty serious guy because we're talking about before he became a big star. And though our ages were pretty similar, he was a year older than me, we ran around. We rode motorcycles all over town here. My 2 motorcycles. Every time he'd come to Nashville, we'd ride around and go places and do things, and nobody knew him, so he could do that then. But I never cared for the music business like they did. Maybe it's because I grew up in it. He was paying me $300 a day, a concert, and I was using his band, so I had no overhead. He paid the motel room, so I had no overhead there. Mine was cash, so if I worked a 30-day tour, I did pretty good. And I'd come in and I'd spend the whole load in a 8 or 9 day because I wanted to be the hit of the party. I wanted the crowd around me. I wanted the attention. And I did all of that because of my background. I'm at the point where I'm knocking $500 a day when I want to work. I'm driving a very nice automobile that I nearly got killed in. I got into drinking and partying and running with the wrong guys. I was packing a gun all the time. Kids feel big when they have things like that. I came very close many times, not only to get arrested, but many times to get hurt, seriously. But you see, I was Hank Snow's son, and when I'd drink, I was outgoing, and I made friends with a lot of the police officers who would look the other way. It was that simple. And, fame and money will buy a lot of things. I just finally wound up becoming sick of myself, sick of who I was.
And now, friends, here's a young fellow whom I named after the late and great Jimmie Rodgers, and singing his new RCA Victor recorded song. Here he is, my son, Jimmie Rodgers Snow.
Well, what do you
you know I've got her? And she's really out of this world. All the papers in town spread the news all around. Look what's happened to me. Well, what do you know? I've got a date. Heaven starts for me at 8. I'll be there at her door about an hour before, 'cause I don't want to be late. I never thought that this could happen. I'm as lucky as I can be. And I hope tonight when the moon is bright, she'll take a shine to me. Well, what do you know? It's a real good thing that she's got a heart I can steal. And if I should find that she's stealing mine, I'll say, well, what do you know?
I realized I was on a road going down, and I was in an ultra depression. I was like an elastic band being pulled almost to the breaking point. And I reached between the mattresses and pulled out my .38 pistol that I told you I carried. And I went outside. It was November the 27th, 1957. I was so torn, I thought, I just would kill myself. And I went out in the front yard, it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and I stuck that gun in my mouth, and I thought, I'm going to kill myself. And I just felt tremendous presence. And so I began to cry out to God, you know, you are real. And it was like all the guilt and all the bitterness and all the lack of attention, all the things that I did not have and wanted, I found in that one moment. And then when my dad came home and I told him, he said, what? He couldn't believe it. I said, I think I'm going into the ministry. I want to be a preacher. Well, I could tell by his look you could have hit him with a ball bat, because he had plans for my career. He wanted me to be following his footsteps and to do the things he wanted me to do. And it was like a blow, like changing his direction.
Say that, don't we? Say amen again. Everybody say praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. Amen. These men come down here from New York and from Florida to find out my reasons on rock and roll music and why I preach against it, and I believe with all of my heart that it is a contributing factor to our juvenile delinquency of today. I 100% believe it. Why I believe that is because I know how it feels when you sing it. I know what it does to you. And I know the evil feeling that you feel when you sing. Thank God there's people today that will stand up and cry out against it. Thank God there's people today that are filled with the Spirit of God that will stand up and say it's wrong, it's sin. But you, teenager, you're engulfed in it. You're sunk. You're pulled down. You're trampled on. You're bound and forsaken by the devil. That's right. The devil's got his hooks in you. He's pulling you plumb down to that old world. And you're just going around with your head down and you're scared to death. Teenager, that doesn't show strength to me. That shows weakness.
The Opry would end on Friday night at 11 o'clock. On Saturday, it ended at 12. So once it ended, you know, you had that news. There was a preacher that came on at 11:05 named Billy James Hargis. And he was pretty well known. And he preached a lot on the communist problems that were coming into America and, you know, the things that were going on in that day.
And now, speaking for Christ and against communism, here is Billy James Hargis.
Developments in Red Cuba, 90 miles from the shores of Florida, hold more ominous warnings for a sleeping American public. While the deadly enemies of the American people close in for their final stages of encircling our nation, enemy nations within intensify efforts to chip away the foundations upon which American freedom rests.
He wound up getting into some sort of a problem. I don't know what it was. I don't even remember. But he lost his program because of it. When I found out about that, I thought, I think I'm going to try to see if they will sell me the time. And with the church, I could talk the people into, hey, let's buy that time if it's not too expensive. So the guy that was managing the Opry at the time was a guy named E.W. Bud Wendell. And he had the ability to foresee what could be done with the Opry. And he made a lot of changes. He's the one that started the Nashville Network. He broadened the radio aspect of it. He built the park. He built that. He had the foreknowledge to do that. He really made a change in everything that went on as far as country music was concerned. He was a big, I would say probably the main man that catapulted country music to the world. He was really something. And so I called. He knew me because I'd been a guest on the Opry before. And he was a friend of my father's. And they had talked and corresponded quite often. So this opened up the door for me to be able to just pick up the phone and call him. And I called him and I asked him if I could have a meeting with him. And he agreed. So I called Johnny Cash, who was going to my church at the time. And I asked John, I said, will you go with me and give me some political power? And he agreed. He said, sure, I'll be glad to. He wanted to know what my plans were and the format and everything, and I told him all about it. And then I called my dad. I said, Dad, and of course, Dad was like one of the #1 country music singers in the world at the time. And he said, yeah, he would go. And so I took the two of them with me. And I went in and I sat down. And I told him, I said, I'm not here to preach doctrines. I'm not going to be doing anything that you would be embarrassed about. I said, all I'm going to do is talk about Jesus. I'm going to deliver a short little message. I won't be going over time or anything. But I said, I will talk about Jesus, and I'll have mainly gospel music. John, spoke up for me, and Dad spoke up for me, and they said, we know what Jimmie's saying. He will stand with it. He won't be an embarrassment to any of you or anything you're trying to do. And so Bud Wendell looked at me and he sat there and stared at me for a few moments and said, well, have you ever thought about doing it on the Opry stage? And I said, no. I said, I never thought about that. He said, well, would you be interested? And I said, yes, I would. And he said, how long before you can start? And I said, give me 2 weeks. And that launched our program. And John and Dad were the first two guests, I think, that I had on the show.
Clear Channel 650, WSM, Nashville, Tennessee, the broadcasting service of the National Life and Accident Insurance Company.
I'm gonna keep on singing. I'm gonna keep on shouting. I'm gonna keep on lifting my voice and let the world know Jesus saves.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Bob Brown. Welcoming you to the Grand Ole Gospel Time. Coming to you live from the stage of the historic Grand Ole Opry House in Nashville, Tennessee. Featuring Pastor Jimmie Snow, Carol Snow, and the Evangel Temple Choir and Band. With tonight's special guest star, Johnny Cash and June Carter Cash. So sit back, relax, and enjoy a half hour of Grand Ole Gospel Time. And now, here is your host, Jimmie Snow.
The whole world has got to know. Everybody's got to know. The black man has got to know. The white man has got to know. Sing it on the mountaintop. I'm gonna shout it in the valley. I gotta tell somebody. I gotta let the world know. Jesus saves. I said Jesus saves. Everybody's gotta know. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the premiere program of a brand new show starting here at WSM called Grand Ole Gospel Time.
By the time I did that program, the Opry was doing wonderful. And by then, they had their own TV network and a whole bunch of things. And so they packed the place both nights. 2 shows on Friday night, 2 shows on Saturday night, and it was packed both nights. And so it wound up that I was the last program. The only thing that separated me from the Opry was the 5 minutes of the NBC News. It was just a 5-minute type thing, because WSM was an NBC affiliate.
The hour's top story. Life magazine has denounced the purported autobiography that Clifford Irving says he wrote on Howard Hughes. The magazine calls it a fraud and will not publish excerpts. Robert Lazich, NBC News. Clear Channel 650, WSM, Nashville, Tennessee, the broadcasting service of the National Life and Accident Insurance Company.
So therefore, with that in mind, it wound up that I'd have to wait, but that was perfect because that would give the Opry people who were getting ready to end and close the curtain because they were going to leave, it gave us time for me to send somebody out in front of the curtain and tell all the people, well, don't go yet, it's not over yet, and so forth, and they'd all sit back down. And because we're going to have Johnny Cash on tonight, we're going to have Hank Snow on tonight, we're going to have Mel Tillis on tonight, because all those Opry people, I'd ask a different one from week to week if they would stay behind and guest on my program, and they people I had worked with. And so I'd known them from being on shows with them. And as a result of that, they'd never turned me down. Marty Robbins was on several times. Johnny Cash was on several times. And, of course, as you know, many of the Opry people did gospel anyway on their program. So it was a perfect solution for me. And it was easy to move over into that. And it was easy to get my guests because if you've ever really studied country singers, not so much today, but back then, most of your country artists were actually got their career starts singing in church. And they usually, because a lot of them come out of the South and the Southwest, and these were areas that were strong religious areas back in the 40s and 50s and so forth. The Opry was closing down, as their last night, so everybody wanted to be on.
Before you take another step, there's something you should know.
In 1974, with the Ryman getting older and even more cramped, the Opry was ready to move into a new home.
I think the Ryman is what it is. I think it is a wonderful place with history that should be preserved. But as country music grew, that place only seats about 800 people or 1,000 people, whatever it is.
And there'll be no mansions waiting on the hill.
So as the art form grows, the facility has to grow.
And there'll be no fancy clothes for you to wear.
Oddly enough, there were many artists who thought when we moved to the Grand Ole Opry House at Opryland that we would lose that flavor.
See the train coming around the bend.
I was one of those holdouts. I wanted them to restore the Ryman and put it together and make it never fall apart and keep the Grand Ole Opry there forever with WSM. And, well, I'm one of those old traditionists that hated change.
I said, hell, I'm thrilled to get out of here, man. All I'm leaving down here is a bunch of sweat that I've went through the summertime, sweating out 2 or 3 shirts every Saturday night to entertain people in this place that's so hot and so uncomfortable. I said, man, the button shoes days are over. Hell, we deserve something better than this.
All right, Roy. I built a castle out of dreams, dear. I thought that you were building too. my heart was filled with gladness. Now there's sadness, only tears, candy kisses wrapped in paper mean more to you than mine do, dear. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Welcome. That will about wrap it up here for us tonight. Thank you all for being with us at our last show for the Grand Ole Opry here in the Old Opry House. We'll see you all tomorrow night in the brand new one out at Opryland. Good night, Mom and Dad. Good night, everybody. Hal, Harold, thank you very much.
George Morgan, ladies and gentlemen. We both have enjoyed tonight's Friday Night Opry. Will join us for the Grand Ole Opry at our new home tomorrow night at Opryland, USA. Now stay tuned for Grand Ole Gospel Time with Pastor Jimmie Snow next on WSM, Nashville, Tennessee.
Well, it also made an opportunity for me to have everybody on.
Yeah. I want to show this picture and have you explain it to me. I'll read what is written. Okay. And written on my copy down in the left-hand corner is it says the Grand Ole Opry's final night at the Ryman Auditorium, March 15th, 1974. And right over your right shoulder, I see Jimmie Snow.
Yes.
I assume you were on his gospel show.
Yes, that's right.
Tell me about that.
Well, it was the final night at the Ryman Auditorium. I had done the Grand Ole Opry a few times before that. But a fan had sent me that from Galveston, Texas, a lady named Ida Webb, and I had it blown up and framed.
Now,
and I wanted to share that with you because it was such a great experience for me, having all the greats there and having done on that stage.
The Bill Turner, the producer, and I were trying to figure this out tonight. It seems to me that when they made the switch from the Ryman to the new Opry House, that they did the Friday Night Opry and Grand Ole Gospel, which is what you were on Friday night, and made the move the very next night to the new Opry House.
Yeah, this was Maybelle Carter, the Carter family, Johnny Cash, Reverend Snow. You might have been there. Were you there?
I wasn't there.
Del Webb. Let's see who else.
So all these people were on that show with you?
Show, yes. And someone had taken that picture, and I wanted to share it with our audience.
So how near the end was this picture taken?
Near the end of
the show.
Oh, let's see. I came on twice, I believe. Once near the beginning and once near the end. It's probably the middle. I don't know which number that was.
Okay.
She didn't elaborate.
In other words, you were on the final hour that the Opry appeared at the Ryman Auditorium.
Yes,
That's something, a nice memory you can treasure.
I know.
And so I think I got the program that night about 1:30 in the morning instead of 11. And the last thing that was done was that song.
Will a circle be unbroken by and by, Lord, by and by? There's a better home awaiting in the sky, Lord, in the sky.
And I preached for about 10 minutes, which is usually what I would do. 15 minutes would be a max. And I'd give an altar call. And that night I had the entire audience, and I think it was like 3,200 to 3,300 people, all stood up and prayed the sinner's prayer with me out loud. I said, this is what I want you to do since this is the Opry closing down. I said, it began as a church, we're going to close it as a church. It closed literally on all the news media everywhere. It closed as a church with a prayer. So it's a historical thing when you think about it. You know, I mean, that's a historical thing for me. It was a historical thing for everybody that was there that night. And it was really something. And it wound up in the World Book Encyclopedia, the 1975 issue. You know, it's something I'm very proud of. So my filming didn't start until we moved to the new auditorium.
We're going to bring out our first guest right now. Want you to make welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Johnny Cash.
Thank you.
Mr. Johnny Cash, ladies and gentlemen.
It's great to be with you.
John, you know, 13 years ago, this is the 15th of February, and the 11th of February, 13 years ago, it's hard to believe, we started this program, Grand Old Gospel Time, and you were my guest.
Right.
And then another great historical event, at least in my life, in 1974, March the 15th, when we left the old Ryman Auditorium and came over to the brand new Opryland complex. You were with us that night, winding up in the Encyclopedia 1975 edition. And here's another great historical landmark event, two great big gospel networks going together and putting this on live by satellite. And here you are again with us on this great event, and thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. You know, we might ought to just go public.